Why do the religious keep looking stupid? Worse, why are they incapable of seeing it for themselves? It comes down to confirmation bias and emotional manipulation, and we're going to see both of those in spades today. Strap in because this is going to be bumpy. A while back now, we did a video from Atheism versus Logic, a very misnamed channel, and showed that our theists neither understood atheism, nor logic, nor much of anything else. So let's do some more of that. Yes, I know that we're going after someone who's already been established to be a complete idiot, but honestly, what else is there? They're all this dumb. They might not all be this obvious about it, but we've never yet found a theist anywhere that actually had an intelligent point to make. If anybody can find one for me to look at, let me know in the comments. Until then, let's get going.
So, atheist, if you don't want to lose credibility for your movement and for yourself, then quit saying that DNA is not code, especially when the claim of a theist is more specific in saying that mRNA is code.
Because that's not a code, at least not in the sense that you're trying to push. You are trying to say that it comes from an intelligent mind, just like, say, the Enigma code used in World War II. Yet they are two entirely different things. Of course, he's just playing fast and loose with his terminology, just like the religious always do, just so they can get to the conclusion that they are already emotionally desperate to reach. Now, hopefully, he's going to get to the point where I can discuss just how pointless this entire tactic is, but I'm going to wait until he gets there and try not to jump the gun. It's the inevitable endpoint of the standard, well, I don't get it, therefore God nonsense that we see all the time. But I'm going to try to be patient. So anyway, please continue.
So what I recommend you do is you study what DNA is and study what mRNA is. All right, DNA is transcribed, part of it, into mRNA, and that sequence of nucleotides, what's hidden inside that sequence of nucleotides is the sequence of amino acids, a polypeptide chain that turns into a protein, that turns into an enzyme or some other kind of object for the living cell to use.
So what? Now, from watching a lot of these clueless apologists, namely Daniel King, I think we all understand that most of them are just reading this stuff off Wikipedia or something. I mean, the religious very rarely ever have a grasp on the nonsense that just falls out of their mouths. But even if we were to assume that he has some kind of actual training, some kind of expertise, actual degrees in relevant fields, his conclusions in the end are where it all falls apart. Because codes don't imply intelligent creation. DNA and RNA are still just strings of amino acids in such an order and in such a fashion that they control how cells replicate. Big deal. And yes, I know it is a big deal from a biological perspective, but that doesn't get you any closer to his magical father figure in the sky. You can't just say, well, God did it. Hopefully he gets there eventually, because ripping it apart is going to be fun.
And so study that. Study what translation means. Compare a codon chart, which tells you how the 3 nucleotides is translated into one amino acid. Compare that to a Morse code chart. If Morse code is code, Morse code is a functional sequence being translated into another functional sequence, but the second sequence is words that we understand.
Not hardly. This is really kind of stupid. It is pure confirmation bias on display. Well, that kind of looks like this, so they're identical. No, that's not how any of this works. You notice what he's trying to do here, right? He's desperately trying to push it in the direction of the conclusion that he really wants to reach. This is interpretation. Bad interpretation, nothing more. Go ask a biogeneticist if any of this is actually true. Once they get done laughing, they're going to tell you what to go do with yourself. I asked that this guy submit his claims to a recognized scientific journal for some peer review, but we all know they'd never print it. He'd say something like, well, it's just a conspiracy against my brilliant ideas. But that's not true. It's just completely incoherent. These journals, they actually have standards, and this crap doesn't remotely fit.
Same with mRNA. If scientists just look at a strand of mRNA under a great microscope, they can't tell what it is, but after it's translated, then they can tell what kind of protein that is.
So, I'm really trying to figure out what his point is, and I'm coming to the conclusion that I don't think he has one. I mean, I'm sure he thinks he does, but from what I've seen so far, he's wrong. See, he's looking for patterns that point to his imaginary friend, and once you start looking, they start to appear everywhere, at least in your head. The problem is, none of it is real, or at the very least, none of it is demonstrable. God made everything, therefore everything is evidence for God. Except the first part of your statement hasn't been supported. It's just an empty claim, and every time we go back to him, he just doubles down on his empty claim without ever stopping to validate it rationally. That's where the religious run into trouble. They just want this stuff to be true. And because they want it to be true, they start to see absolutely everything as a demonstration that it is, because they lack the capacity to step back and look at things objectively. These people can't see things beyond their religious biases. It's why this guy doesn't understand jack shit. Jack thinks he's an idiot and shit went home.
Look at, GMO, genetically modified organisms, that they're taking a sequence of DNA from another organism and they're putting it in this organism so that it can be different, because that difference, that trait, is hidden in the DNA.
Yes and no. We understand that the particular sequence of genes do tell the organism, whatever it happens to be, to do specific things. It's just chemicals doing what chemicals do. We understand how these things operate, and therefore we can use them to our advantage. It's just like if we take toluene, nitric acid, and sulfuric acid in the proper amounts, well, we get TNT. But that doesn't mean that some god intended it to be that way. It doesn't mean that some magical man in the sky said, hey, I think that shit should explode. That's a ludicrous leap of illogic because he's emotionally attached to the idea. But that doesn't make it true. These things are all just natural processes that we've figured out how to make use of. That doesn't prove a god is real. Rent a clue.
All right, now we have mRNA vaccines, right? So that makes you less credible because people are understanding that the goal of that mRNA vaccine is to produce a protein in your body so that your immune system can react to that protein.
Nope. Sorry. Now, I get what he's trying to push for, and like I said, I'm going to wait until he actually gets there to laugh my ass off at his stupidity. This really is the epitome of, well, I don't get it, therefore God. It's just, I don't know how this works. I'm just going to arbitrarily staple a concept that I happen to be fond of onto it and just demand that's got to be the explanation because I'm uncomfortable not understanding the world around me. Okay, too bad. That's not how rational inquiry works. I'm hoping he's going to get there by the end. I'm going to have to go into it anyway because, that's what I do. So come on, dumbass, don't let me down.
Well, now people are understanding that the code for that protein is in the mRNA. So I understand you're denying science, aspects of science, because you don't want to believe in a creator.
No, you're just reading things into it that don't happen to actually be there because you really want to believe in a creator. There's a difference. And here, yet again, I just happened to see a video this morning that dealt with this over on the Atheist Experience. I will get up in the morning and watch a video while I'm eating and then maybe write something or record something, whatever. And that's what happened this morning. The caller was so desperate to believe that he made a ton of claims. The host corrected him on every single one of them, and he ignored them because he just wanted to believe. But that's not how that works, and the guy just kept arguing that how he interpreted things must be true because fifis. Everything was being done from a Christian perspective, because that's what they really want to be true. This is why worldviews are so harmful. They take what you want to believe and they place it as an overlay on reality, insisting that your preferences are automatically correct so that you can get to the conclusion that you desperately want to reach. And that's not how intelligent thinking works. It's just not.
Well, you've got to stop that because people are going to think you're less credible.
You know, like everyone does about you. This is one of the reasons why Christians become laughingstocks. And of course, it's not just Christians, because all religions do this. But they start off with the beliefs they want to be true, and then they rationalize their way to those beliefs while being supremely self-confident that they're doing nothing wrong. Except they are. When we say to follow the evidence to where it leads, we mean to do it without your emotional preconceptions, without your faith, without your fifis dragging it along, kicking and screaming. Be concerned with what is actually true, not what feels good. And this idiot clearly can't do that. I find that absurdly sad.
Right? So, I mean, scientists know what an analogy is. They could say DNA is like code, mRNA is like code, but when you look at all these scientific papers, when you look at scientific sources, just study DNA. Just look up what is DNA, what is mRNA, and look at secular sources that you trust.
This is really just another case of the religious playing musical definitions. This is insanely common when talking to the religious. It's like they pull up a long list of possible meanings for a word, and then they just randomly switch between them freely depending on which of them happen to be the most useful in the moment. They will change stances 10 times in a 2-minute conversation if they think it's going to help them out, and that is blatantly dishonest. Yes, scientists will use the word code in their evaluation of DNA, just like they will use the word theory when they're talking about proven scientific fact. But that doesn't mean something that requires an intelligent source to come up with any more than it means, well, a random guess. This guy just comes along afterwards and pushes that interpretation onto the writing because it gets him where he wants to go. If he actually went and talked to those scientists, and they could stop laughing, and he asked what they meant, they wouldn't agree with him. He doesn't care about that, though, because he's just got to be right. His emotional comfort is on the line. But that doesn't matter, does it?
They say it is code. That if you decode it, you're getting the protein, that the ribosome decodes it and turns it into a polypeptide chain. So may you be more credible and stop being a science denier by saying that DNA is not code or by saying that mRNA is not code. And I think it's funny because what happens a lot is I say mRNA is code, and then atheists will be like, DNA is not code. And I'm like, you misspelled mRNA, which tells me you're already trying to dodge the scientific evidence because you can't even steelman a simple sentence like mRNA is code. You change it to DNA.
That is not what they're disagreeing with, Dipstick. This is you reading a whole bunch of stuff into it that doesn't actually appear. Why? Well, fifis, of course. Because here's why there is a problem, and it seems like the religious can never quite understand. He's saying that mRNA is code, in the sense of his religious beliefs, requiring him to think that some magical sky wizard made everything. Most of these people assume wrongly, that if he can just get over that initial hump, the rest is just going to come tumbling down behind it. And that's wrong. This is all, well, if I just look at it this way, I'll be able to get where I want to go. Except it doesn't work that way. Even if you established rationally and evidentially that mRNA was some kind of code that needed an intelligent designer, and keep in mind they've never even remotely gotten to that, it still wouldn't get you to a god. Any god. It would only get you to some designer. His wishes and his dreams don't matter. Now, you'd have to show that your proposed designer was actually real. And that, of course, would require evidence. And that your supposed designer actually created the code. And that would require more evidence, none of which you actually have. They figure that if they can just dishonestly force one link in the chain, mostly through fast talk and empty claims, then everything else is just going to materialize out of nowhere. And I'm sorry, but you're wrong. You can't get to, hey, I don't get this, to, hey, this must have had a designer, to, hey, that designer must have been a god, to, hey, that god must have been my god, without filling in every single step with evidence along the way. And that's the one thing these people can't get.
Because it's even more difficult to say mRNA is not code.
It's not code in the sense that you're pushing, and that is not hard to see at all. Now, after that, Jeremy tries to push his book again, and I went and I looked inside the book over on Amazon, and yeah, it's just dumb. This is just a load of confirmation bias, which is what all religious beliefs are fundamentally based on. I almost thought about doing a video debunking the book, but I'd have to buy the book, and there's no way in hell I'm giving this jackass any of my money. Anyhow, we come back to the undeniable fact that Jeremy is just reading a whole lot into his assertions and just tacking "therefore God" on the end because that's what he wants to be true. That's insanely common, isn't it? Again, worldviews and interpretations make these irrational takes not only possible, but likely. When you start off with what you want to be true instead of what is demonstrably true and keep pushing down that path for dopamine and emotional desire, they're not likely to go well, are they? Yet that's the core of religious beliefs. I really want it to be true. But that doesn't make it true. It just proves that you are an overly emotional idiot that can't separate your feelings from the objective facts around you. Biased interpretations, they don't matter. Just because you can staple "but God" onto everything, that doesn't prove that God is real. But these people don't care. We do. He's so tied up in the weeds that I doubt he's ever going to be able to find his way back to reality, but he's still good to laugh at. And that, my friends, it's just sad.